Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Weekly Notice with Andy Ngo. We are now on episode 10 already, 10 weeks of this weekly program. Thank you very much for joining. As always, please leave your questions and comments, and I'll get to it in a later segment in the show. Okay, so let's get right down to it. The one of the common themes you see in my podcast, in my live stream, is that I write about and I talk about hoaxes on the left. We hear day in and day out about the dangers of misinformation and disinformation, and that's used as a justification for all sorts of unfair and, frankly, oftentimes very draconian rules on social media. That's usually, in my view, applied unevenly and is biased. Um, so it's really important then for journalists to call out when there's disinformation that is spread by the left and the far left. And unfortunately, most of it just kind of flies by. People don't call it out. And if you do, as I do, um, you're portrayed as somehow the problematic one, right? We see this over and over, but we need to keep calling them out when they spread things that are untrue. So the latest thing to have happened occurred in Kansas City, Missouri, on last Friday. That would be the 27th of May. So there was a police-involved shooting of a Black woman. Um, she didn't die; she survived. She's in hospital, but the story that we were told on social media is that an unarmed Black pregnant woman was gunned down by police. And this is again evidence that police are out there systematically trying to eradicate every Black and brown person. I'm going to show you my Twitter thread calling out how, as you would expect, it was complete BS. Bullshit, I'll just say. It's tiring. The work is, we just see over and over. So here we go. Okay. So Occupy Democrats was one of the main accounts on Twitter that had thousands and thousands of retweets. So they claim here a witness reveals that Kansas City police shot Leona Hale, that's the name of the suspect here, a pregnant unarmed Black woman, 5 times as she was running away from them. She has been hospitalized with serious injury, but remains stable. So Occupy Democrats is a activist group that helps to push propaganda for the Democrat Party in the United States. Quite often, they post information that is unconfirmed and later revealed to be untrue. They post lies. So just think of them as a propaganda partisan group. They call themselves journalists, and they sort of style themselves that way by using things like breaking in their tweets. They don't break any news. They bring attention to things that reinforce a certain narrative that is helpful for Democrats, and with really reckless disregard for if it's true or not. So Leona Hale, well, they say everyone said that she was unarmed, including many in the press. And well, this is a photograph that was released by the prosecutor's office in Kansas City, and it shows her with a firearm. So I'm gonna pull up the press release from Jackson County prosecutor. Okay. Bigger. 26-year-old Kansas City woman has been charged with exhibiting a weapon in her encounter Friday evening with Kansas City police officers. Leona M. Hale, date of birth 1996. She's been charged with unlawful possession of a firearm, unlawful use of a weapon, and the misdemeanor resisting a lawful detention. So this unarmed woman that BLM supporters lied about was party to, and this is just a criminal complaint, by the way. So the police in Kansas City were responding to what was a carjacking incident, and Leona Hale was a passenger in the vehicle, and the suspected driver had fled. And according to the prosecutor's office, she had brandished her weapon at police, did not respond to their orders to um, to follow their commands, and therefore she was shot. And so there were a whole bunch of posts that went viral on social media, as happens every time. This is what they're very good at, spreading disinformation on things that are not confirmed and turn out to is baseless at the time they posted it and is later confirmed to be baseless. So this is still from body camera footage won by police that was released by the prosecutor's office. And if you've seen the video, by the way, there's a really heavy compression artifacting that is in the still. For example, you see on her left arm, part of it goes into, looks like it goes into the fence behind her. Her ankle, one of her ankles is like, looks like it's invisible. So when I posted this image from the prosecutor's office dispelling the lie that this suspect was unarmed, then a whole army of left-wing trolls then put out the lie that I had photoshopped the image, or the image was fake. There's no evidence for that at all. These people are ignorant, and I would just say plain stupid and unaware about how digital compression happens on videos, particularly body camera. Any type of digital video footage that faces really heavy compression because of space issues. So body camera footage, oftentimes the surveillance footage, ring camera footage, all of that is recording a lot of information, and so the codecs that are used to compress the video, they make shortcuts to cut down on the size of the video file, and so you have things like, particularly if there's fast moving motion. If you watch it on video, it usually looks fine, but if you take screenshots, at times you'll see certain things looks like they disappear for a second and they come back. I'm sure you've seen many of these videos on Twitter where things look kind of weird when you like slow it super down. That's not evidence necessarily of it being Photoshop or doctored. It's evidence that the footage came from a heavily compressed source. So there's no evidence so far that anybody has produced on the left that the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office submitted evidence to the public that is fake. Certainly, if you do, you should contact the authorities about that instead of going on Twitter and accusing baselessly people of lying without evidence. Going back to Twitter. So, yes, I posted this last night to try to clamp down on the false narratives. And there was just so many, like, and all by people who, I mean, look at this guy, Ryan Sheed, over 14,000 retweets. Again, false. Two Kansas City police officers shot an unarmed 26-year-old pregnant Black woman. By the way, nobody has confirmed that she was actually pregnant. By the way, that is still unconfirmed. So as of right now, I just say there's no evidence to support that. This claim of this woman being uh, unarmed came from some person who was an alleged witness. But just a reminder, often the witnesses who go to the press when they um, witness one of these highly charged instances of police responding to some type of incident where there's and then a suspect or a person happens to be shot by police. Much of what the witnesses have to say are often untrue or actually are lies. Um, Hands Up, Don't Shoot was a claim from a close friend of Michael Brown in Ferguson. Remember Ferguson? That Michael Brown Hands Up, Don't Shoot? That was, really helped launch Black Lives Matter into the mainstream back in 2015. That was also in Missouri. And a DOJ investigation into that case exonerated Officer Wilson. At that time, he ended up leaving the department. So the officer was completely exonerated of wrongdoing, and Hands Up, Don't Shoot was a lie. Forensic evidence showed that Michael Brown assaulted the officer, and based on the gunpowder residue on his hand, that supports the statement from the police officer that Michael Brown tried to get his gun and that his hand was close enough to the firearm that the gunpowder residue was on his hand. So witness statements are incredibly unreliable, which is why when it's submitted as evidence in a trial, they're cross-examined. And so the issue with social media is that in this in journalism as well, it's a problem in journalism is then these statements are disseminated and they can go viral, particularly when they reinforce the left-wing BLM narrative as it did this time. Okay, so this fool Ryan Sheed. Al Jazeera Plus, I don't have a screenshot of it here, but Al Jazeera Plus also, they did a video. You can see this tweet was deleted by the author. So after it was already known from the prosecutor's office that she was indeed armed, they had this video up last night, this montage about how she was unarmed. This woman who's a purported academic sociologist, Guess Carlarco, also repeated the wasn't armed claim, lie. She ended up locking down her account after I called her out. This person, Lori Garrett, she's a Pulitzer Prize winner, by the way. And her response was, look, again, a black woman tells police she cannot lay on the ground because she's pregnant. They shoot her unarmed, nothing in her hands. Nothing in her hands. Look at the still footage that was released from the prosecutor's office. So when I see things like this, it makes me wonder about these type of journalists and writers, about their other body of work. Like if they can fall for something that is so demonstrably false so easily, I wonder how many other errors have been introduced into their body of work over the years. Linda Sarsour, remember her? She's the radical Islamist activist, an anti-American activist from Brooklyn. She gained a lot of notoriety around Islamophobia campaigns, and she latched onto the BLM stuff back in 2015, 16, 17, and then she became a very big figure in the Women's March. She's a horrific anti-Semite, and of course, she spread disinformation. It's a claim that Leona Hale was unarmed when she was shot. Linda Sarsour, by the way, just as a reminder, she campaigns for the release of Afia Siddiqui, this woman with the head covering on the left. This is a convicted terrorist, by the way, a Pakistani terrorist. And CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is the largest Muslim so-called civil rights group in the United States, has been campaigning for her release. Do you guys remember a few months ago when there was a hostage taking incident in a synagogue by a Muslim man who came all the way from England? He he took that synagogue hostage and he was demanding for the release of Afia Siddiqui, by the way. So a lot of mainstream and unfortunately violent extremist Muslims are in support of this terrorist, Linda Sarsour being one of them. And she's brought onto television and the press as this representative for Muslims in America. And of course, with the lie that this suspect who was unarmed, that was shot, there's campaigns to raise money for her. Cash App donations. I censored out the handle here. Kansas City Defender, by the way, was probably the one that really helped spread disinformation about this incident. And then, unfortunately, a lot of verified media also spread the lie that she was unarmed. Unsourced magazine, the Source magazine here, BET repeatedly. They runs multiple Twitter accounts, BET TV, BET Her TV, BET News, and they all repeated the lie that Leona Hill was unarmed. And more verified media spreading the lie. And unsurprisingly, one of the verified official chapters of Black Lives Matter also help make the lie go viral. And this one's interesting here. Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw is probably the main academic to help mainstream CRT in academia. She is a law professor at UCLA, so she came, the one of the theories that she came up with that has become very popular among the left and the far left is intersectionality. So very highly academic woman, spreading, like others did before her, a lie. Yeah. So, okay. For those of you who may have just joined, please leave questions and comments for me. There's such a reckless disregard for the truth among many on the left. It's not unique to them too, you know. I'm not saying that the left lies and the right doesn't. There is this, as a journalist, what matters to me is accuracy, and I see misinformation spread all the time from all sides. I think a pretty egregious example just recently, with the mass shooting that happened in Texas by the Latinx shooter. There were all these viral posts that went on social media by conservative and right-wing accounts of a person in a dress that was not the shooter, but people said it was him, said that he was trans, and that was completely untrue. Somebody was trolling on 4chan when they posted those pictures and made these allegations. So that's a problem. And what really annoys me, though, is that when the left systematically spreads disinformation, it's not seen really as an issue. People just move on. People don't get fired for it. People don't get deplatformed. Posts don't get taken down. There aren't warnings put on that the claims in the post is misinformation, disinformation, or unverified or untrue. And so it creates this perception that disinformation is only a right-wing issue. And that is what really annoys me. And speaking of the Texas mass shooting, Uvalde, there was a hoax that was proliferated on social media last week. So in the wake of the shooting, you've seen the the responses from liberal and left wing commentators and pundits, and um, they've been they've been going crazy. I'm not just talking about their unrealistic um, proposals for what could change or what needs to change, but um, them wishing death and harm to Republican politicians. One really sick story that went viral on Twitter came from an account run by a man named Jason Noretz. And he made a super viral thread claiming that his nephew was one of the children that was a victim in the mass shooting in Uvalde, and that um, when the family went to see the body and went home to grieve, that a representative of the Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott tried to bribe them into getting the family to pose for pictures and for PR. He alleges that the family turned down the offer, and that this representative for Governor Abbott then basically threatened to disappear the family. So it had, I believe, over 32,000 retweets. And this was a screenshot from his thread. And you can see the story is really absurd, but because it conforms to a left wing bias, people just suspend any critical thinking and just swallow it all up. When I first saw this, it didn't smell right because let's see, let me read from this. Um, he was asked to leave and said that if we speak about this conversation, we will be facing charges and possibly worse. That sounds kind of like how somebody, I don't know, like if you're writing a script or a fiction story, like you would write something like that. We responded with "F you, try me and find out." Then we were told people get hurt and disappear all the time. Like, people in real life just don't really talk like that. This kind of reminds me of Stormy Daniels. Do you remember when she did like her bombshell sit down interview when she still had that bald head guy who was her attorney, and he said he had like this evidence about uh, uh, allegedly his client having a sexual relationship with President Trump at that time, and he had posted that picture of the CD in like a vault, and people was thinking there would be really explosive information in the sit down interview. And then when Stormy Daniels finally did, her story was that some person went up to her who she doesn't remember a lot of key details about, saying that allegedly threatening her child and saying, oh, you have a lovely child, would be ashamed if something happened. Like, people just don't talk like that in real life. So this just kind of reminded me of that. Anyways, we got over 32,000 retweets, over 75,000 likes. So it was seen by, unfortunately, a lot of really powerful people, including politicians and influencers for the Democrat Party. Congressman Joaquin Castro believed it. Asked this person to reach out to him privately. Um, I documented and screenshotted all the numerous people, journalists, who fell for it. So this individual, Richard Whitaker, he's an editor at the Austin Chronicle, and he's demanding that Abbott explain this incident. So people, look at this important thread: Greg Abbott attempting to coerce victims' families to not speak by giving them money and threats of violence. Just over and over, all these verified accounts spreading disinformation. And if you looked on this account that made the claim, by the way, first thing you should realize that is weird and should be obvious to everyone is when you have an anonymous account, you don't have the real name or the real face or any identifying details, just throwing out sort of like some scandalous accusation. A normal person, particularly a journalist, the first reaction would be for disbelief, but no, because people wanted it to be true because they hate Abbott. They just suspended all that. And if you look through his posts, there were a lot of really weird stuff there that showed evidence of a pathological liar. For example, the account, My Cancer Journey 3, uh, which is operated by Jason Noretz, by the way. He had claimed in the past to be a 9/11 responder, a recipient of the Purple Heart. He claimed to have had another nephew that was killed by a sheriff. There aren't that many Purple Heart recipients, and nobody with the name Jason Noretz has received one. So that's one way you can debunk. People found out his real name, and this is how um, I was able to find out. Is if you look through his posts at various times, he had asked for money for, I think it was his Cash App, and that was the same name that linked then therefore to his Facebook. So people were able to find out his real name. He tried deleting evidence of it, by the way. And I'll show you some of his pictures. These are Facebook pictures from the guy who ran the account. Um, yeah, and he had another post, by the way, which he claimed to be black. So it's like all the evidence that this was complete BS was out there in the open, yet it just spread like wildfire. Some more Twitter verified people. Pat Morrison, by the way, is a multiple Pulitzer Prize winner. She's a very established columnist for the LA Times, a journalist. Over and over, we see that some of the stupidest people are the most educated, the most awarded people. This Sean Gables, by the way, is a CBS 46 news anchor, so she's a broadcast reporter. They tried deleting all of this, by the way, which is why I took these screenshots. And goodness, Keith Olbermann, of course, spread this hoax among his very large audience. Keith Olbermann used to be a host on MSNBC. His show, I assume because of low ratings, it wasn't renewed, and he's now reduced to somebody who tweets out stupid, crazy stuff on his social media. Yeah, the usual actors, left-wing activists here, Amy Siskin. Media, please investigate this report. Why are you asking the media to investigate this when all you have to do is look through his posts that were available at that time? By the way, I'll hold off. So a lot of journalists jumped onto it. Look at this person. WFAA journalist, reached out. Eleanor Dearman with the Fort Worth Star Telegram. So, yeah, here another journalist here, Katie Hall. So, she's a reporter for The Statesman, which is a liberal paper in Austin, Texas. She's also the chair of the Austin News Guild. And her response was, look, please DM me so I can share your story about the encounter that you had with an Abbott representative. Your family and everything they've gone through is weighing on me and my heart. Please take care. That's not really how a journalist should be talking to somebody she's trying to interview, particularly somebody who exhibits all these signs of being a pathological liar, as I just discussed. So, after myself and other people brought attention to, let's just say, some of this fishy stuff about the account that belongs to Jason, the account was locked down the following morning, and he deleted the account. Let's see if it's still there. Yeah, he deleted the account. Look. But before that, he had disabled it. And then he had told press who reached out, because finally the press was seeing that, hello, some things don't add up. He said that the account was hacked. I don't believe it. I think Jason Noretz runs the account. I think he's behind all these lies, these series of lies about being a victim of this, having this person die, that person die, being a 911, a 9/11 first responder, being a Purple Heart recipient. This is somebody who, for years, has demonstrated um, this pattern of making really, really outlandish lies that can be really easily verifiable. By the way, somebody who's a first responder for 9/11. By the way, the New York City keeps a database on survivors of that and those who have passed and have suffered from illness as a result of being exposed to all the fumes, the chemicals, the dust from the 9/11 jihadist attacks. So, um, yeah, back-to-back hoaxes by the left that go viral, and nobody calls it out as a serious issue on social media, and it is an issue, a big problem. So mass shootings obviously have been on a lot of people's minds because we've had several high-profile mass shootings that have happened in the United States in the past few weeks. It was Buffalo. Um, People don't really talk about them. The mass shooting that happened at the Taiwanese church in Southern California, because the perpetrator there was um, somebody who had anti-Taiwanese sentiment and was of ethnic Chinese background, of Volde. And then there was another mass shooting that just happened yesterday in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Um, this immediately, of course, got a lot of attention because people are very primed and are sensitive, understandably, to these mass shooting cases because we've had a lot of media attention on it. Mass shootings, unfortunately, are very common in the United States, and most of it doesn't get much media attention because it's gang-related warfare. The suspects are black, the victims are black. Nobody really cares in those mass shootings, but when they can tie it to some other larger narrative, such as white supremacy, like in the Buffalo shooting, or gun control issues in the school shooting in Uvalde, then people on the left care, and then the press cares. So there was a mass shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday. A gunman killed 4 people at a hospital. Really shocking. St. Francis Hospital. 2 doctors were killed, as well as a receptionist and I believe a patient at the hospital campus. The gunman killed himself before he could be apprehended. Police, from reports that I read, did respond within about 3 minutes of the shooting beginning. So they responded very quickly. Usually, hospital campuses, big ones, will have their own police departments, anyways, in order for them to be able to mobilize quickly this way. Similarly, universities will have it too, which the left have systematically worked to try to disarm and to abolish in the names of Black Lives Matter. Um, yeah, so the gunman today, we now know who he is. His name is Michael Lewis. This is from an older booking photo of him. When the shooting happened and there wasn't a lot of information out there, a lot of people on social media inaccurately speculated that the shooting was somehow tied to white supremacy. Um, to critical race theorists, that's their go-to for everything. It's almost like, and there are historical examples, by the way. In the past, it was very, in Europe, to for there to all these conspiracies about all these various ills in society would be blamed on the Jewish minority, and of course that led to that type of belief then implemented at a party level and at a state level um, led to the Second World War and mass genocide. Um, in the Middle East today, in Arab societies and in Muslim societies, anti Semitism still is very mainstream and common and is unfortunately a part of the regular rhetoric in the religious institutions as well as the day-to-day street culture life. Um, I'm drawing an analogy to historical and contemporary anti-Semitism in that these people today who always jump to blame white people uh, or white supremacy or whiteness for every ill in society, to me that's a parallel. It's this inability to process complicated realities, complicated incidents, complicated narratives, and in fact, to always go back to the one answer as a panacea to answer for everything. Um, it should be clear how that's an issue. Unfortunately, many on the mainstream left, the academic left, journalism left, um, think that it's a legitimate argument and they repeat various forms of it. And many have enriched themselves to the millions by being authors who spread this ideology. And yeah, to me, as somebody who's not white, as somebody who is descended from parents who are refugees to the United States, I find all of it so it's bizarre and disturbing, and it's really weird to me that other Americans, like white Americans in particular, don't really see the parallels that I just talked about. And there are also many other forms, right? Just blaming, demagoguery, blaming of a particular group for all these type of ills, and it's so expansive, and they blame white people and whiteness for things that have like you can't even draw any type of connection, like um yeah, like with these mass shooters that have been black or Latino, whatever, that's white supremacy is still blamed. um like this person who Clint Watts. He's a senior research fellow for the Foreign Policy Research Institute, which is a prestigious think tank. And he wrote, all shootings were not white supremacist attacks, but one mass shooting like the one at Buffalo Supermarket can set off a contagion like we are seeing now. So there's been no evidence from either local or federal authorities that the mass shootings that we've experienced in the past few weeks have been like inspired by Buffalo. That's wild speculation. I think it's reckless, particularly coming from somebody who's an academic and works for a renowned think tank. Um, as I said a moment ago, the reality of mass shootings is that it's unfortunately a regular occurrence in the U.S. And you wouldn't know it, but the perpetrators of mass shooters are pretty diverse. You would think from the media reportings that it's just a white male problem. It's a male problem for sure, but it's not a white male problem. I'm just going to pull up some of the photos of some of the mass shooters from 2020, by the way. And as you see, um, it's pretty diverse. So these blanket claims that white people are to blame for all mass shootings it's empirically false. Thank you, everyone. Those who just joined in, leave your questions and comments. I'll get to them very soon. Okay. One of the stories I worked on this week was about an Antifa member in Portland who has started a GoFundMe campaign, started a couple months ago, to try to raise legal defense for a federal criminal case that this person was indicted on for their alleged role in destroying federal property during an Antifa insurrection. This is the account that the person runs on Twitter, and this is the photo that this individual uses um, as to represent themselves. Um, about the GoFundMe, so GoFundMe's terms of service says that you are not allowed to run campaigns to raise for the legal defense of those charged with violent crimes. I keep bringing attention to that because that was used as the reason for the Kyle Rittenhouse fundraising to be shut down, because he was accused of shooting um, rioters who were trying to kill him. So that was the reason that was shut down. As you remember, it took a lot of effort for a campaign to be able to be restarted and for the money to come in again. But Antifa and various left-wing extremists have been able to start left and right every day these campaigns to raise money for really violent comrades, and I'm trying my best to bring attention to it. People can report these GoFundMe's when you go on the actual page. Usually they're not shut down, though. Almost always they're just not. Again, it goes back to this issue of where things that are done on the left are not seen as an issue when it's whereas when it happens on the right, it's a big problem, right? So yes, this is the person's Twitter profile. This is the post where they announce the GoFundMe. The person's name, by the way, is Ellie Amber Starling. The person was formerly known as Adam Lindsay, and in a moment you'll see why that's important. So they have a GoFundMe for a legal case. It's trying to this Starling is trying to raise some $6,000, and this is a screenshot of the actual GoFundMe. Ellie Lindsay. So using monikers, not using the full names, using a fake picture as the organizer here. And well, I remember who Ellie Amber Starling is. That's this person. So yeah, this is a case of an Antifa catfisher misleading comrades about who they really are to try to fundraise money. You know, trying to get Antifa cents to donate to their campaign. Anyways, this is Ellie Starling, formerly known as Adam Lindsay. So be careful of what campaigns you donate to for all the reasons I just mentioned, but for those that care, the individual may not be who they claim to be. Okay, one moment. So this is sort of a developing story that happened yesterday, and if you're on my Getter, you see me post about it. So yesterday, I received an email from this gentleman, Jason Wilson. I knew of him because he used to write for The Guardian, and he's done some hit pieces on me, I think back in 2017, back when I was a university student at Portland State. So I've always known him to be extremely biased, unfair, and I would say unprofessional. he was allowed to roam free at the various Antifa protests and riots in Portland, because he puts out information that is in narratives that are favorable to Antifa. Um, he's originally from Australia. He relocated to Portland, Oregon a number of years ago, and now he's found a career as a blogger for the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC. So they're working on a hit piece. It may be out already at this point. I don't know. But um, he's working on a blog entry about how Subscribestar has various alleged unpalatable people on the far right, people who have been banned elsewhere. They're able to open up a page, an account on Subscribestar. I have an account on Subscribestar. I opened it after I saw that Patreon was very unfair towards its treatment of various people and that it was susceptible to cancel campaigns by the left. And Subscribestar is a good alternative. And so he reached out to me to ask questions that are really none of his business. He wanted to know what my income is across my various platforms. Like, now, who do you think you are to just email somebody, particularly somebody who you've been rude to in the past, to ask them personal questions like that? I mean, like, have some self-awareness at the very least. And the gist of his hit piece, by the way, was that my reporting is shared and reposted by Proud Boys and other right-wing accounts on Telegram. And what does that say about me? How do I feel about that? And as they do, as SPLC and the left do, it's guilt by association, and this is not even really an association. I mean, I'll read you my response to him, but yeah, he pointed out he thought he found some dirt on me. He thinks he knows how much I make on Subscribestar. He says he estimates that it's $2,700 a month. That's inaccurate. It's significantly less, by the way. And by the way, I have no shame in asking people like you all to support me, because this is my job. This is my work. I'm not supported by multi-billion-dollar institutions. The SPLC sits on almost $500 million in assets. The Guardian, all these other big media corporations have a lot of money and a lot of support. I work as an independent journalist. There's no dishonor in having a modest income and asking people for support. He brought up the fact that Michelle Malkin did a fundraiser a GoFundMe fundraiser for me back in 2019. If you recall, that was when I was hospitalized for the brain bleed because of Antifa. And Michelle Malkin started a campaign to help pay for my medical bills and my medical treatment. So he wrote, "You use various platforms in right-wing media to attack left-wing activists, Muslims, transgender individuals, and people of color. Your fans and supporters include right-wing influencers and many right-wing extremists. I'm contacting you to offer you a chance to comment." He asked me how much of your income is derived from crowdfunding and subscriptions on sites including Subscribestar. Are you aware that dozens of extremists also include Subscribestars due to bans from other platforms? Were you aware your stories are regularly reposted on Telegram by accounts associated with extremist groups like the Proud Boys, blah, blah, blah. And he wrote at the end that he gives me 24 hours to respond. I get reached out for comment pretty commonly by these left-wing junk platforms. Often it's usually a waste of my time to respond. I don't know these people answers for anything. But this time I thought I would respond just because of the irony of his questions. So you can see, by the way, on my GetHer that I posted my full response. I won't read it word for word, but I also posted it on my other social media. So I wrote and I just let him know that I found it really fascinating that his line of attack on me would be for guilt by association, that I'm somehow that I need to answer for the various political views of those who share my content either on social media or on Telegram. I don't know if Jason knows. I have over 1 million followers across my social media platforms. Of course, there are going to be people who have views that I disagree with. Do I care? No. Does it matter? No. What matters to me as a journalist is accuracy, which is why as I've talked about before, when I get something wrong, it's really disappointing. It's really important to delete what's wrong or to correct the record. And that's something people like Jason would do better work if he really centered that. What's weird about this line of rationale as an attack on me is that the SPLC has actually inspired a terrorist. Back in 2012, there's a man named Floyd Lee Corkins, who was a fan of the SPLC and used their hate map to target a conservative Christian think tank. He came in with a gun with the intention to carry out a mass shooting and was fortunately thwarted by the security. He was convicted on a firearm assault and terrorism charge when he was being interviewed by the FBI. He said he got the information to target the conservative Christian group from the SPLC. So this is the legacy that the SPLC stands on, and they're asking me to account for those who retweet or repost my content, my reporting. Like, I don't, I guess you just have to have no shame, no dignity to not see the irony in that, to even ask somebody questions that Jason did. And also, this is a pretty poor attempt by the SPLC to try to rehabilitate their image, as I brought to Jason Wilson's attention in my response. So he accuses me of attacking Muslims, transgender individuals, and people of color. The SPLC settled a defamation lawsuit by a Muslim man who sued them for $3.37 million. Okay? The SPLC, their employees, went to CNN in 2019 to talk about how the place is systemically racist and sexist. This is the SPLC who's wagging its finger to reach out to people like me to ask me how do I feel about the politics of the various people who share my content. Yeah, so I asked Jason all of this regarding the financial stuff. Why should I be ashamed that I'm on Subscribestar that asks people for money? Why should I be ashamed that I do this full time? The SPLC has $500 million in assets, okay? And they keep $162 million of it in offshore funds. I looked at their audited financial statement, and I recommend you do too, because they're a registered nonprofit, so they are required to report this information and to make it available. Despite sitting on more money than some small micronations, they still ask for donations every day. Yeah. So that was Jason Wilson of the SPLC, the disgraced SPLC, reaching out to me for a comment on a hit piece. Okay. Now, questions and comments. Okay, I'll get to it. Just give me just a second to read it. PK7 asks, do they referring to the left, spread lies because of laziness or maliciousness? It's both. Clicking or pressing retweet on Twitter when you have a large platform takes no effort, right? You're not even burning 1 calorie by moving your fingers to do that. So yes, it's laziness. and it's laziness that reinforces what they wish to be true. So they take no issue in thinking further about what information they're spreading out. And then there are those who are actually malicious, those who, I think, based on their education and based on their experience in journalism, have the skill set to be critical of these various claims and yet don't apply it, um, and are intentionally reckless. Um, I use PK7 also asks, why do people go to Twitter for news? So I'll tell you why I'm on it and why so many journalists are, because it's revolutionized the way that you can break news. Um, you are able to get out pretty much nearly instantaneously, let's say something that literally just happened, or photos of something that just happened, or video, and you bypass all the gatekeeping of traditional broadcast news. So even for broadcast news, let's say there was something that happened, like in Tulsa, the shooting happened, a number of minutes passed, police get there, the new, journalists and local broadcast station catch news tip that, hey, there was a mass shooting that just happened at this hospital campus. We need to get there now. We need to get a team there now. We need to get the journalist there, the broadcaster, the cameraman. That takes minutes in time. And even though in the grand scheme of things, we get the reporting on television or in print really quick, there still have been a number of minutes that have passed in the best of circumstances. With Twitter, you bypass all of that. Now that's a double-edged sword. The What's wonderful for people like me is that we're able to get the information straight to you. But then that means others can put out information that is inaccurate and also make it go viral and face really no repercussions. Whereas when you print something that's untrue, that's published, and it's false or it's wrong, there's more of an expectation that you correct that record. Oftentimes they don't, but more often than, like, let's say random people on Twitter, they will make effort to correct that. So that's why Twitter has just become this place for people to get news. And I'm not really sure what the best solution is to some of those issues that I just brought up. It ties into the larger issue of what responsibility do social media platforms have to remove incorrect information or unverified claims. I think I'm probably of the view that a balanced and even equally applied policy to all political views in claims is probably needed. Unfortunately, what we see it applied to right-wing news claims. Okay. Direct Action 00 was responding to the that hoax story about the governors of Texas, about how a representative threatened violence against a grieving family. Direct Action, they aren't journalists or activists. I hear that claim a lot, and it's fair. It's overused, but it's true. A lot of liberal journalists, they don't recognize themselves to be left wing in terms of their bias, even though they are, because of the institution of where they at, the environment, the milieu they're part of. In fact, often what I encounter is that they think they're being straight down the line and apolitical, but in fact, their sense of what is in the middle is left. So they don't recognize even when they exhibit biases. And that's in the best of circumstances. And then we have, of course, a lot of journalists who are just very openly partisan and biased, like a lot of the people who write for Daily Beast and Rolling Stone, etc. They don't hide it. They don't have any issues. And the editors don't even take issues with it. The hour is up, but I'm going to go just a little bit more. So if you can, please stay with me because I wanted to talk about something on a more positive note as I close out, because it is, all the things I just talked about, hoax after hoax from the left, lies from the left, responding to attacks on me. That's not really fun. But today, Thursday, was the beginning of the Jubilee celebration in for the Commonwealth. That is, those who are subjects of the Queen of Great Britain. And this is my first time experiencing the Jubilee celebrations. She's been on the throne now for 70 years, 70. So she is the oldest, longest serving British monarch, and currently, I think, one of the longest living monarchs in world history. She, I believe, is 96 years old. So earlier on Thursday, there was an event, a parade, a very big parade called the Trooping the Color. It's a weird name, but it's where you see all these military battalions marching, amazing costumes, great live music, and it was to honor the Queen's birthday, which happened earlier in the year, but the parade was for now, and hundreds of thousands of people showed up in central London, and it was a really great display of patriotism and respect for the Queen. Lots of people brought their pets. That's not my dog there. Somebody very wonderfully let me take a picture with Penny. This dog was very sweet. And then, of course, Corgi. The Queen has a few Corgis. And as you can see here, in the picture, you can see Buckingham Palace behind the gates, and there were so many people that all the to get even near the park or the street where the parades were, you just couldn't. Like, you probably would. The event started, I think, around 10 or 11 in the morning. You probably would have needed to come there at like 6 a.m. to even get in. Everything was blocked off. So unfortunately, I was very far away. I couldn't see anything. But I got to really take in this 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 patriotism, which is really beautiful. And as an American, it helps me better to in the times that I've spent um, in England, in the UK. As an outsider, I never really understood why there's so much love for the British monarchy. And I think I'm getting better sense of understanding it now. So you have a head of state that's been queen for 7 decades, and through all the changes in prime ministers, through the um, I mean, yeah, she's how many presidents, American presidents, have changed in the 70 years? How many prime ministers they've gone through? How many wars have gone and passed in the world? She's been stable through all that, and is not a political figure that, as the head of state, represents all of those in the Commonwealth, and has dedicated her life to service and duty, which is what the role of the royal family is, which is why they go to all these functions and events. You see the glamour of things like what I was just talking about, the huge parade, the big parade that happened today, and there's going to be other events going on. But most of the activities are doing things like going to the opening of a school, the reopening of a hospital, and it's a whole lifetime of duty and service to one's country and one's people. And I find that very beautiful. And I think, explaining it to Americans, you can understand that. And we so, for example, then when you have scandals in the royal family, like what happened with Prince Andrew and Epstein, it's so it's so disappointing, right? Because you have then people who are born and take on this role and then abuse the access that they've had and the money that they've had to do things like that. But that's not all of the monarchy. I look at the queen and I really see a really dignified woman. And it's many people leave the royal family because they come into it thinking that you're just a celebrity when it's not. You do service. So Meghan Markle, the American, she didn't even last 2 years in the royal family. Packed her bags, went back to America with her prince of a husband. They stepped down completely. So it was today was lovely, really lovely to see people express gratitude for being subjects of the Queen and to express patriotism for the country. Um, what I like about America is that a lot of Americans are really patriotic, and it saddens me that that has been so systematically attacked by Democrats and the mainstream left. Um, in other countries, expressions of patriotism are less common. So for it to see in the scale that happened in London on Thursday was really beautiful. And okay, so for those who want to continue to follow my work a little bit more and find out how to support me, on my GitHub profile, there's a link sorry, not LinkedIn, Linktree. My name is just Andy NGO. And so you can see my website, and I have a subscribe star, as I talked about, a Patreon or locals. You can also give one time through PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. My Cash App and Venmo name is at Mr. Andy Ngo. It's the same as my Get Her handle. And you can see all these other links. Again, thank you so much for the support that many of you give me. One-time support, monthly support. Yeah, it that means a lot to me, and I really appreciate that you joined this week's episode. And thank you for sending in your questions. And I look forward to seeing more of your feedback in the comments and Get Her. Okay, and I'll be seeing you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Goodbye, everyone. And if you are in the Commonwealth, have a wonderful Jubilee weekend. Goodbye.